The moment it happened was nothing short of shocking. A bustling international airport, travelers rushing to catch flights, security officers patrolling the terminals, the usual organized chaos of a major transit hub. But then, something unusual, something that turned heads. A black man in a clean-cut military uniform stood near baggage claim, waiting patiently. He wasn't causing a scene. He wasn't doing anything out of the ordinary. And yet, a group of airport police officers approached him, their expressions tense, their postures rigid. It started with a few questions. Routine, perhaps. But then, things escalated. Before the soldier could fully process what was happening, he was surrounded. Passengers gasped as officers gripped his arms, forcefully pulling him away from his luggage. Someone recorded on their phone. The soldier didn't resist. He remained composed as they pinned his hands behind his back, shackling his wrists with cold steel. That's when the murmurs started. What did he do? He looks like a soldier. Why are they arresting him? That uniform. Something's not right here. As they dragged him through the airport, his deep, authoritative voice cut through the tension. Do you even know who I am? The lead officer scoffed. We don't need to. You're coming with us. But there was one problem. One major problem. They had no idea what they had just done. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The cold steel table reflected the dim glow, casting shadows on the man sitting in handcuffs. Across from him, two officers stood with arms crossed. Their faces were a mix of suspicion and something else, uncertainty. One of them threw a file onto the table. A thin file. Too thin. We ran your name, the officer said flatly. Nothing came up. No criminal record. No warrants. But something's not adding up. You don't have proper identification, and you're walking around in a military uniform. That's stolen valor. Silence. The soldier exhaled slowly. His eyes remained calm, controlled. But the room itself seemed to shrink under his presence. Then finally, he spoke. Check again. The officer exchanged a glance with his partner, but there was an unmistakable shift in the air. Something was wrong here. The soldier wasn't scared. He wasn't even angry. He was waiting. Outside the room, in a dimly lit hallway, another officer worked at a computer. His fingers clacked against the keyboard as he ran a deeper search through military databases. The first search came back with nothing, no records. But then, something strange happened. A second search triggered restricted access warnings. Confidential file, authorization required. The officer frowned. That wasn't normal. Most military personnel had standard profiles. But this was different. He tried again, using a higher clearance channel. And then, the screen glitched. Lines of code flashed across the monitor before a red security alert appeared. High-level security restrictions. Unauthorized search attempt detected. System lockdown in effect. The officer's stomach dropped. His hands hovered over the keyboard. He had seen alerts like this before, but only for classified military officials. Very high-ranking ones. He turned his head slowly toward the interrogation room. The man sitting inside wasn't just a soldier. He was something else. Back in the room, the lead officer leaned forward, pressing his hands against the table. Look, you're not talking, and that's not helping you. Best case scenario? You're a guy in a fake uniform. Worst case? You're a threat to national security. So, unless you want this to get worse, I suggest you start talking. For the first time, the soldier smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. Worse? He said quietly. You think this is bad? Before the officer could respond, the door slammed open. A man in a black suit stepped inside. No badge, no name tag, no introduction. But the officers in the room immediately stepped back. The air turned thick with tension. The man in the suit looked at the soldier, then at the officers. His expression was blank, unreadable. Then, in a voice so calm it was terrifying, he said, "Release him. Now." The lead officer's jaw tightened. "With all due respect, sir, we found him—" The man in the suit cut him off. "I said release him." Silence. The soldier slowly leaned back in his chair, watching the exchange like a spectator at a game he had already won. One of the officers hesitated before stepping forward and unlocking the cuffs. As soon as they snapped open, the soldier rubbed his wrists and stood. Tall, unshaken, dominant. That's when the man in the suit turned to the officers and uttered something that sent a chill down their spines. Something they never expected. "Do you have any idea who you just put in handcuffs?" The officers exchanged panicked glances. The soldier adjusted his uniform, exhaled through his nose, and then he did something that changed everything. He pulled out an ID card. It wasn't a standard military ID. It was black, solid black, with a gold insignia and a clearance level none of them had ever seen before. The lead officer's throat went dry. The soldier tucked the card back into his uniform, stepped forward, and leaned in just enough for his voice to drop into something dangerous. "Next time," he said, his voice smooth but sharp as a blade, "think before you put your hands on a superior officer." The officers were frozen, their faces pale. That's when the man in the suit spoke again, his tone now carrying an undeniable weight of authority. "He's not just an officer." Everyone turned. The room held its breath, and then the bombshell dropped. "You just arrested a highly classified top-ranking operative. And now, you've got a much bigger problem." The room felt like it had shrunk. The officers stood frozen, their faces pale, their mouths slightly open as if words had abandoned them. The man in the black suit didn't move. His presence alone was suffocating. And the soldier? He simply adjusted his uniform, his composure unshaken. The lead officer swallowed hard. A top-ranking operative?" he repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. The man in the suit didn't answer. He simply turned his head, giving the soldier a knowing look. A look that said this was bigger than anything these officers could comprehend. Then, everything happened at once. The door slammed open again. A second black-suited figure stepped inside, this one moving with urgency. Unlike the first, he was holding something, a small, secure phone in his gloved hand. He didn't waste time. He walked straight to the soldier and handed him the phone. "It's him," he said. The soldier took the phone, raised it to his ear, and listened. Silence. Then, in a tone so low it sent chills down the officers' spines, the soldier finally spoke. "Understood." He handed the phone back. No explanation, no reaction. But when he turned his head toward the lead officer, his gaze had shifted into something colder. The suit's voice cut through the air again. "He's done here." The officers blinked. "What?" "You heard me. He's leaving. Now." The lead officer took a hesitant step forward, still trying to process everything. "Sir, with all due respect." The soldier tilted his head, and for the first time, he spoke in a way that made the entire room go silent. "You think you had a choice in this?" The weight of his words hit them like a hammer, and that's when the final blow landed. The second black-suited man turned to the officers and said something that sent a bolt of terror through their veins. "Do you even know why he was at this airport?" Silence. The officers looked at one another, confused. They didn't. Then, the suit leaned in slightly and dropped the bombshell. "He was here to prevent an attack." The world stopped. For a few seconds, the officers couldn't breathe. An attack?" the lead officer stammered. "What do you mean?" The soldier exhaled slowly, as if he had finally run out of patience. Then, in a calm but deadly serious tone, he revealed what they never saw coming. "There is a high-level target inside this airport right now." Every officer stiffened. "And because you wasted time with me." He took a slow step forward. The enemy has had time to move. It was like ice hit their veins. The lead officer's hands clenched. "You're lying." The first black-suited man raised an eyebrow. "Are we?" Beep. 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 A radio call crackled in the hallway outside. "Dispatch, we have an unidentified man heading toward Terminal 4, moving erratically. Possible weapon detected." Everything snapped into place. The realization hit the officers like a freight train. This wasn't about stolen valor. This wasn't about false identification. This was real, and they had interfered. The soldier turned toward the second suit. "Location?" The suited man pressed an earpiece and nodded. "He's near Gate 47, 2 minutes out." The soldier didn't hesitate. He started moving, straight for the door. The officers didn't stop him. They couldn't. Because they finally understood. They had arrested the only man who could stop what was coming. Outside the interrogation room, the airport was a different world. Passengers moved normally, some still glancing at their phones, others chatting. But they didn't know. They had no idea what was seconds away from unfolding. The soldier strode through the hall like a predator locking onto his target. His hands were steady. His heart rate didn't even spike. He had done this before, many times. The man in the suit moved beside him, murmuring into an earpiece. "Units are en route. You want me to?" "No." The soldier cut him off. His eyes locked on something ahead. And there he was, a man, medium build, dark hoodie, walking too fast. His right hand was clenched at his side, too rigid. Something was in it, something he was hiding. But the soldier already knew what it was. A weapon. The man was nearing Terminal 4's security gate. One step closer, and he would be inside. Near civilians, near hundreds of lives. The soldier didn't slow. He moved. The hooded man saw him. For a split second, their eyes met. And in that instant, the man ran. But the soldier, he was faster. One sharp move, one pivot of his foot, and then impact. The soldier slammed into him, pinning his wrist in one brutal movement. A gun dropped to the floor. Gasps erupted around them. A security alarm blared. In seconds, armed airport officers swarmed. The man on the ground screamed, struggling against the force pressing him down. But it was over. The soldier stood up slowly, letting the police take over. He barely even looked at them, because his job was already done. Minutes later, the hooded man was dragged away. The officers who had arrested the soldier stood nearby, still in shock. One of them turned to the man in the black suit, his voice shaking. "Who is he?" The suit didn't answer. Instead, he let the soldier speak for himself. The soldier tilted his head, his expression unreadable. Then, for the first time, he revealed the truth. A truth that no one in that room was prepared for. "I don't exist in your system because my record is buried under national security clearance." The officer's eyes widened. "You arrested me thinking I was some stolen valor case." A slow, eerie smirk touched his lips. "You put your hands on a man who operates in the shadows of your own government." He leaned in slightly, his final words chilling. "You didn't just arrest a soldier. You arrested a ghost." The room fell silent, and as he turned to walk away, disappearing into the airport crowd, the officers were left forever haunted by the mistake they had made. Because now they knew. They had just crossed paths with a man whose true mission would never make the news. A man whose real battles were never meant to be seen.